Good evening. A father has been found not guilty of murdering his baby daughter. Cora Walsh was 3 months old when she died 2 years ago. Her father, Christopher O'Neill from the White Rock Road in West Belfast, was charged with her murder. Today, a jury at Craigavon Crown Court sitting in Armagh found him not guilty. Sarah Neal reports.
Throughout the 4-week trial, Christopher O'Neill denied any suggestion that he'd harmed baby Cara, saying that he'd loved her to bits. The 26-year-old from White Rock Gardens in West Belfast was accused of killing his 3-month-old baby daughter by shaking her violently while in a rage at her home in Glassfay Park in Twinbrook in February 2014. During the trial, he said that he had shaken her, trying to revive her. He thought she was dying. Baby Cara died in hospital 2 days later. In Craigavon Crown Court, sitting in Armagh, a jury of 10 men and 1 woman found by a majority verdict of at least 10-1 that Mr O'Neill was not guilty of killing his baby daughter Cara. They had deliberated for at least 4.5 hours over the 2 days. When the verdict was read out, Mr O'Neill sighed with relief. In the public gallery behind him, the baby's mother stood up. She shouted at him, "You killed my baby. My baby is dead because of you." She was led from the courtroom with her family. Still in the dock, Mr O'Neill put his head in his hands. When the judge said that he was free to leave, his family applauded. They then hugged him and said, "We love you." Speaking on behalf of his client, Mr O'Neill's solicitor said it had been a difficult case in which there had been no winners. Sarah Neal, BBC Newsline, Armagh.
A coroner has criticised police for failing to find a young man who died after going missing from a mental health unit. His body was found 10 weeks later close to the unit at the Ulster Hospital. 22-year-old James Fenton from Bangor had been identified as high risk after he told staff he wanted to kill himself. Mervyn Jess reports.
The family of James Fenton at the coroner's court this afternoon for what marked the end of long, difficult and at times distressing proceedings.
It's been a horrendously long road, not just for a few months, for 6.5 years. It has been so hard.
22-year-old James Fenton went missing from Ward 27 at the mental health unit at the Ulster Hospital in early July 2010, and the police were called in to search the grounds of the hospital. They failed to find the missing man, whose body was discovered less than 40 metres from the mental health unit 10 weeks later. The coroner was very critical of the police response when James Fenton went missing from the mental health unit. He described the failures as inexplicable, unexcusable and deeply unsatisfactory. Mr McCriskin went on to say that had the police investigation been a proper one, they may have found James Fenton much more quickly, although he couldn't say whether or not he would have been alive. A police ombudsman report was also critical of how the case was handled, and 12 officers were subsequently disciplined. The PSNI has since changed its policy and practices on missing persons as a direct result of the Fenton case. The coroner described the actions of the hospital staff at the time as reasonable and appropriate, but he had harder words for the PSNI. Joe McCriskin said consideration should have been given to a police dog search, which may have led to Mr Fenton being found shortly after he absconded. He described this as a major failing that could have prevented the prolonged trauma suffered by the family. Today, the PSNI issued a wholehearted apology to the Fenton family for the police failings in this case.
Well, I'm hoping things will change. I know that the PSNI have changed their way in looking and searching for a missing person. But you just can't keep making the excuse that there isn't enough funding for mental health. Things have to change. How many more people have to lose their lives?
The coroner found that due to advanced decomposition, the cause of James Fenton's death was unascertainable, although it was his view that the young man died shortly after he climbed over the gate and absconded from the Ulster Hospital's mental health unit. Mervyn Jess, BBC Newsline, at Belfast Coroner's Court.
A care worker found guilty of abusing elderly residents at a care home in West Belfast has been sentenced to 4 months in prison. 41-year-old Lisa Cullen from Lagmore Drive in Dunmurry was sentenced after pleading guilty to assaulting a whistleblower from the home at a previous court appearance. Relatives of those who were cared for by Miss Cullen were at the court for the sentencing.
It was the hardest thing we ever done in our life, is to put our mother there, and to find out that she hit my mother, it's just soul destroying.
She told my husband, who had Alzheimer's, full Alzheimer's, she was like a baby, to go out and play in the buses. Better still, go out and run around the traffic.
Plans by the Health Minister Michelle O'Neill to tackle hospital waiting lists have been criticised by the DUP leader Arlene Foster. In a letter, Mrs Foster responded to Minister O'Neill's £31 million plan to treat patients who've been waiting for more than a year. The DUP leader accused Sinn Féin of electioneering. But Sinn Féin hit back, saying the DUP were trying to deflect attention away from the RHI scandal. County Antrim man says he's been left in shock after a slurry tank crashed through a wall into his front garden this afternoon. Our North East reporter Sarah Gervin has the story.
CCTV shows the dramatic moment a slurry tank crashes through the wall of this house. It missed the home itself in Glenavy by less than a metre. The homeowner, who was in the property at the time, said he's just glad no one was hurt.
Well, obviously quite shocked, but equally, relieved. It could have been so much worse. That if somebody had been standing here, you can see where lumps of the wall have gone flying. So it could have been a lot worse if myself or my children or any of my family had been there, or anybody, the postman, anybody at all.
The Belfast road was closed for a time while the car, tractor and slurry tank involved in the crash were removed. Oil also had to be cleaned up, but the road has reopened. Sarah Gervin, BBC Newsline, Glenavy.
Rugby now, and Ulster hung on to secure a 24-18 win against Edinburgh at the Kingspan Stadium this evening. Our reporter Gavin Andrews has more.
On a bitterly cold evening in Belfast, Ulster picked up a significant win, but it was tense. The pre-match buzz about the debut of Ulster's Springbok Marcel Coetzee. It was Edinburgh's number 8 Marcus Bradbury who rumbled over for the opening try. But Ulster quickly responded, Paul Marshall bursting through from close range. Centre Darren Cave ran in the second, wide out on the left. The third try was made by the brilliance of all-black Charles Piatow. He set up Louis Ludic for a simple run-in. And Ulster had the bonus point in the bag before half-time. Jacob Stockdale put the finishing touches on a slick move. After the break, Edinburgh came back into it. Damien Hoyland's try set up a nervy finish. And after a series of stoppages for injuries and a penalty from Sam Hidalgo-Klein, the hosts held on for a hard-earned win. Next up for Ulster, the visit of Glasgow Warriors in 8 days' time. They'll be hoping it's a little less tense. Gavin Andrews, BBC Newsline at the Kingspan Stadium.
Yeah, well played, Ulster. Well, it was a cold one outside today, but what does the weather have in store for the weekend? Cecilia Daly can tell us.
Hello there. It's going to stay cold this weekend, so make sure you're wrapped up nice and warmly. Tonight, it looks like it could be quite frosty in some places, quite a sharp frost as well. Temperatures could drop as low as -5 degrees in parts of the countryside. Not everywhere will see a frost, but many places will start Saturday frosty, and eventually it should be a brighter day. And by and large, it will be a dry day too, but it is going to feel cold, especially in coastal areas where we've got that breeze coming in off the sea. Gradually, the frost lifts out of the ground. There will be some sunshine at times tomorrow morning. There'll also be a cold wind coming in off the North Sea, dragging in snow showers for many eastern counties of Scotland, England, right down to London. Bear that in mind if you're travelling this weekend. Further west, it's drier. In fact, some of the best weather will be across the west coast of Ireland. If you're travelling further, perhaps to Rome to see Ireland play, well, it will be milder. Temperatures in the low teens. And of course, there's live coverage of that on BBC Radio Ulster. Back home, no 14s for us. 5 degrees if we're lucky. A cold wind as well. The cloud coming back in, bringing in a few snow flurries to some places. So Sunday will also be a cloudier day, quite breezy, cold in that breeze, a little bit of sunshine here and there, and again the possibility of 1 or 2 wintry flurries, but any snow not amounting to very much at all. Next week it still looks largely dry and breezy, but we should start to see temperatures come up. In fact, by the time we get to the middle of the week, it will be noticeably milder with temperatures in double figures, but there'll also be some rain around. Have a great weekend. Stay warm.
Well, that's it for now. Our next BBC Newsline is at 4:05 tomorrow afternoon here on BBC One. In the meantime, you can keep up to date with news online.